The wind brushed across the headstones of Rosewood Cemetery, tugging at loose leaves that skittered across the gravel path. It was the kind of morning that felt suspended, too quiet, too still, as though the world itself were holding its breath. The sun hung low, casting gold over the polished marble markers. And at one particular grave, marked with Daniel Harrison Whitford, beloved son, a young woman knelt as though the earth were the only thing keeping her upright. Her name was Kendra Morgan, 26 years old, dark-skinned, tired-eyed, and dressed in her waitress uniform, still smelling faintly of coffee from her dawn shift at the Harbor Village Cafe. Her curly hair was pulled into a loose bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. In her arms, she held a baby girl no older than a year, wrapped in a yellow blanket embroidered with tiny stars. The child cooed softly, reaching out toward the grave's fresh white lily, the kind someone brought every month. Kendra brushed a thumb across the baby's cheek. "Say hi to Daddy, Lily," she whispered. Lily clapped her hands, delighted by the sound of the leaves fluttering in the trees. Her big brown eyes blinked as she leaned forward, patting the stone gently. The sight always squeezed something inside Kendra's chest. Daniel would have cried seeing that. He would have held his daughter and told her stories about the stars he loved, the paintings he planned to create, the life he wanted them to build together. But he wasn't here, and Kendra carried that weight alone. She placed a second flower on the grave, bright orange lilies, Daniel's favorite, and closed her eyes. "Wish you were here," she whispered. "We miss you." She didn't hear the footsteps at first, not until the air shifted and a shadow stretched across the grave. Kendra's eyes opened just as a tall, elegant woman stepped into view, white tailored coat, pearl earrings, and posture sharp as glass. Everyone in Connecticut knew her face. Alexandra Whitford, CEO of Whitford Global, owner of 3 skyscrapers, net worth $2.7 billion, and Daniel's mother. Kendra's heart stumbled. Alexandra froze mid-step. Her ice blue eyes widened, not at Kendra, but at the child in her arms. For one disorienting second, Alexandra's breath visibly caught. "Kendra," she said, voice low, sharp. "What are you doing here?" Kendra swallowed hard. "Visiting. With a child?" "Yes." Alexandra's gaze cut to the baby again, lingering, searching, and then her expression shifted into something far colder. "You need to leave." Kendra tightened her grip on Lily. "I'm not doing anything wrong. This is private property," Alexandra snapped. "You don't get to appear at my son's grave like this. Like this." Kendra had heard those words her whole life. From customers who snapped their fingers at her. From strangers who assumed her name must be sweetheart or hey you. From people who didn't even try to hide their judgment because of her job, her clothes, her skin. She stood slowly. "I loved your son." Alexandra laughed once, an icy, humorless sound. "A waitress? You think you belonged in his life?" Lily fussed quietly, sensing the tension. "I don't have to explain myself to you," Kendra murmured. "Oh, but you will." Alexandra took a step closer, heels clicking against stone. "Because I want to know exactly why you are parading a baby in front of my son's grave." "Whose child is that?" The pause stretched thick in the air. Kendra's breath trembled. "She's Daniel's." Alexandra's nostrils flared. "You expect me to believe that?" Kendra didn't answer. Didn't need to. Lily turned her face toward Alexandra. Big eyes, same almond-shaped Daniel had, the same soft dimple in her left cheek. For a second, Alexandra seemed carved from stone. She reached a hand out, hesitated, and then let it drop. "That child," she whispered. "She looks like her father," Kendra finished softly. Alexandra's jaw clenched. "You are lying. She's his daughter. You think showing up with a mixed-race baby and a dramatic story will get you something?" Kendra stepped back as if struck. "This isn't about money." "Everything is about money," Alexandra snapped. Lily whimpered. Kendra rocked her gently. "She deserves to know him," Kendra said. "Even if he's gone." Alexandra's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "You listen to me carefully, Miss Morgan. Daniel did not have a girlfriend. Daniel did not have a child. And you will not tarnish his legacy with cheap, manipulative lies." Kendra swallowed hard. "I have proof." The billionaire's expression flickered, only for an instant, before turning cold again. "Leave." But Kendra didn't move. Alexandra leaned in, eyes burning. "Leave. Now. Before I make you." A groundskeeper in the distance paused, watching the confrontation, jaw tight. A young couple visiting a grave turned to look. Someone even pulled out a phone. Kendra's voice barely rose above a whisper. "You don't scare me." Alexandra straightened, spine rigid. "You should be scared, Miss Morgan. People like you always overreach. And people like me?" She smiled, a small, terrifying thing. "We make problems disappear." Kendra felt the threat like a blade at her throat. Her stomach tightened. She shifted Lily on her hip, clutching her protectively. But she held her ground. Alexandra stood inches away, the autumn wind sweeping her hair back like a queen preparing for battle. "Put that child down," she commanded. Kendra paled. "No. Put her down. No. She's my daughter." "She's Daniel's daughter," Alexandra snapped. "And if that's true, which I highly doubt, then she belongs with the Whitford family, not with you." Kendra stepped back, horrified. "You can't be serious." "Believe me when I say," Alexandra whispered. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." A chill threaded down Kendra's spine. Before she could react, Lily reached toward Alexandra again, innocent, curious. And for a split second, Alexandra's mask cracked as she saw it. The dimple, the birthmark near the temple, the exact shade of brown Daniel's eyes had been when he smiled. Her hand trembled. Her face drained of color. She froze completely. Then she stepped away as though burned. "No," she muttered. No, it cannot." But the truth was staring at her with big brown eyes. Kendra met her gaze. "She's yours. Your granddaughter." Alexandra turned abruptly. "This conversation is over." And she strode away without another word, leaving Kendra trembling beside the grave. But as she left, Kendra saw something she'd never expected to see in the infamous Ice Queen of Connecticut. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear. She knew. She knew the truth. And she would not let it go quietly. Later that night, Whitford Estate. The Whitford mansion sat atop a hill overlooking the water, its windows blazing with warm light, but offering no warmth inside. Alexandra stood in her private study, staring at the fire without seeing it. A baby. A child who looked like Daniel. A child whose existence threatened everything. She paced the room, jaw locked tight. A waitress. A young, black, single mother with no money, no power, no status. And yet somehow, she had Daniel's child. Alexandra's fingers dug into the back of a leather chair. No, this could not be happening. Not again. 22 years ago, she had handled a similar situation, quietly, efficiently. A girl from the wrong side of town, working as a janitor at Daniel's private school. Alexandra had made sure that problem vanished before it ruined her son's future. No one challenged her. No one questioned her. But this time, this child, this woman at the grave, it was too close. Alexandra snapped open her laptop and dialed a private number. The man answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Whitford, how can I assist you?" "Lawrence," Alexandra said sharply. "I need information. Quickly." "Name?" "Kendra Morgan. Age mid-20s. Works at a cafe in Bridgeport. And she has a child." She hesitated. "A girl." "Understood. Standard background check." "No," Alexandra's voice turned to ice. "I want everything. I want her entire life in a file. Where she lives, who she speaks to, how much she earns. I want leverage. I want pressure points. And I want them fast." Lawrence's tone didn't change, but something calculating slid into it. 48 hours. "No," Alexandra's pulse thudded against her throat. 24. A pause. "As you wish." She hung up and stared at the darkened window, her reflection staring back. Aging, powerful, unyielding. She whispered to herself, "Daniel, what did you do?" She pressed a hand over her chest, a gesture she hadn't made in years. The grief struck quick and sharp. Her son, her only child, gone. And now this woman appeared, threatening the fragile structure of the world she'd built to protect his legacy. "No," Alexandra forced the wavering grief down like poison. "I will not let her destroy what remains of you." She turned toward her desk, eyes steeled. If that child truly was Daniel's, then the Whitford empire, the fortune, the shares, the investments, the board trust, all of it belonged to the little girl wrapped in a yellow blanket. That could not happen. Not while Alexandra still breathed. Across town, Kendra's apartment. The apartment was small, a one-bedroom with creaking floors and walls thin enough to hear distant sirens at night. But it was home. It smelled like cinnamon oatmeal and baby powder. Lily slept peacefully in her crib, one hand clutching her stuffed bunny. Kendra sank onto the couch, every muscle trembling. The scene at the cemetery replayed in her mind, vicious and sharp. Alexandra's fury. Alexandra's disbelief. Alexandra's threat. Kendra buried her face in her hands. Why did she have to show up today of all days? She hadn't been trying to cause trouble. She visited Daniel's grave twice a month, always quietly, always early when the cemetery was nearly empty. She whispered little updates about Lily, told him stories, left flowers, promised to keep going. But today, everything changed. She reached for the small box beneath the coffee table. Inside were photos, letters, and the thing she protected most. Daniel's voice note. The last message he sent her before he died. Her hand shook as she opened her phone and pressed play. Hey, love. I'm almost home. Rain's a little worse than forecasted, but I'll be there soon. I can't wait to see you and Lily. I've been thinking about our plans, about telling Mom. I don't care what she says. I'm done hiding. We're a family. I'll protect you both. Always. Kendra covered her mouth as tears flooded her eyes. That promise died with you, she whispered. She replayed the message twice more. Each time, grief squeezed tighter. A knock startled her. 3 sharp taps. Her heart dropped into her stomach. No one visited her. Not this late. Not ever. She scooped Lily from her crib, just in case, and padded softly to the door. Who is it? She called. It's Maria, came a familiar voice. Kendra let out a long breath and opened the door. Maria, her co-worker, her friend, stepped inside, jacket pulled close against the cold. I saw your face at work earlier, Maria said gently. What happened? Kendra sank onto the couch. She found me. Maria blinked. Who? His mother. Maria's eyes widened. The billionaire? Kendra nodded. Oh, Kendra, Maria exhaled. What did she say? Kendra told her everything. From the confrontation to the threats to the look of recognition in Alexandra's frozen expression. Maria listened silently, eyes darkening with each detail. When Kendra finished, her voice cracked. She's going to come after me. I know she is. Maria squeezed her hand. You're Lily's mother. And Daniel loved you. She can't erase that. But she could. The Whitford family had erased people before. Kendra swallowed. I'm scared. Maria held her tighter. And you're not alone. But in her heart, Kendra felt the storm rising. A powerful woman had noticed Lily existed. And billionaires didn't lose without destroying something first. As the night deepened, Kendra rocked Lily to sleep again, whispering, I'll protect you, baby. I promise. Whatever comes next, I'll protect you. But outside her window, a black sedan idled for a long moment before quietly disappearing into the dark. And Kendra had no idea that tonight was only the beginning. The next morning broke with a heaviness that hung over Kendra's apartment like thick fog. Lily woke early, bright-eyed and laughing, completely unaware of the tension twisting her mother's stomach into knots. Kendra moved through the kitchen in slow steps, making oatmeal, packing Lily's small daycare bag, and fighting back the image of Alexandra's frozen expression at the cemetery. The moment the billionaire saw Daniel in her granddaughter's face. She didn't want to think about the threats or the cold finality in Alexandra's voice. But deep down, Kendra knew people like Alexandra Whitford never let anything slip out of their control. And now she had seen Lily. She had seen the truth. That alone was enough to turn a powerful woman into a dangerous one. Across town, Alexandra paced the length of her private study as the sky shifted from gray to pale blue. She had barely slept. Rest was impossible when panic scraped at her nerves, when memories of Daniel battling her decisions clawed through her composure. She replayed yesterday's moment endlessly. The birthmark on the baby's temple, the unmistakable shape of Daniel's eyes staring back at her. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't imagination. That child was his. A granddaughter meant an heir. An heir meant everything Alexandra had built, everything she protected, everything she shaped for Daniel, would no longer belong solely to her. She clenched her jaw at the thought. No waitress with a minimum wage job and an apartment the size of a closet would raise a Whitford. Not a child tied to billions. Not a child born into the wrong world. At exactly 9 a.m., her investigator called. Alexandra snatched up the phone. I have what you asked for, he said. It's thorough. Email it. Alexandra ordered, though her voice trembled slightly. Now. Seconds later, a 14-page report printed onto her desk. She sat, smoothing her hands over the first page. Subject, Kendra Lorraine Morgan, age 26. Race, African American. Occupation, waitress. Income, $31,400 annual. Residency, small rental, Bridgeport. Stability, moderate. Criminal record, none. Notes, mother of one child, Lily. Paternity, unlisted. Every word felt like a confirmation of what Alexandra already believed. Too small, too poor, too ordinary for Daniel, and too dangerous to leave in possession of Daniel's legacy. She skimmed further, photos of Kendra walking home, pushing Lily's stroller, laughing with customers at the cafe, shopping for secondhand clothes. Ordinary moments, innocent moments. But Alexandra saw only vulnerability, weakness, places to apply pressure. And then she reached the photo that made her chest tighten. Lily, smiling. A dimple on her left cheek identical to Daniel's. The tiny birthmark. The shape of the eyes. Alexandra's throat closed. She pressed the picture to the table as if trying to flatten her emotion beneath it. She is his, she whispered. She is unmistakably his. For one fragile second, grief washed through her. The kind she kept buried so deep she pretended it didn't exist. A baby girl, her only grandchild, living in a neighborhood she'd never stepped foot in, eating food bought with paychecks that barely stretched 2 weeks. But grief wasn't the emotion that won. Fear did. And fear, in Alexandra, always turned into control. She straightened, snatched her phone, and dialed her attorney. Martin, she said without greeting, we move immediately. File for emergency guardianship. On what grounds? He asked cautiously. On all of them, she snapped. Financial instability, unsafe environment, lack of resources, lack of influence. Whatever you need. That child deserves the Whitford life. Martin hesitated. These cases get messy, Alexandra. So make it clean. And if she resists? She won't, Alexandra said, voice flattening into ice. People like her never win. Meanwhile, back at the cafe, Kendra worked with a nervous tension she couldn't shake. Every time the bell on the door chimed, she jumped, expecting Alexandra to appear like a storm. When her shift ended, she picked up Lily and held her closer than usual, watching her daughter's big brown eyes blink up with trust and confusion. She tried to convince herself that maybe, just maybe, Alexandra would let it go. But by the time she reached her apartment, she saw the envelope sticking out of her mailbox. Thick, heavy, a law firm's name printed in bold. Her stomach dropped. Inside her living room, she opened it with trembling fingers. The words sliced her open. Emergency petition for temporary guardianship. Filed by Alexandra Whitford. Claiming inadequate financial stability. Claiming unsafe living environment. Claiming Kendra Morgan is unfit. Her vision blurred. They want my baby, she whispered. They really want my baby. Lily crawled into her lap, tugging at her shirt, unaware of the storm building around them. Kendra's hands shook so badly, she nearly dropped the paper. Fear clawed through her. What chance did she have against a billionaire? Against lawyers who cost more per hour than she earned in a month? She covered her face with her hands and sobbed quietly so Lily wouldn't hear. But Lily pressed her warm little hand against her cheek anyway. Mama, she babbled softly. And just like that, something inside Kendra steadied. Not completely, but enough to breathe, enough to think, enough to stand. No, she whispered. I'm not giving you up. I don't care who she is. I don't care how much money she has. I won't let her take you. Across town, Alexandra stood at her window overlooking the ocean, unaware that the line she crossed today would spiral into consequences she couldn't control. She believed her influence was untouchable, her name unbreakable, her resources limitless. But she had underestimated one thing: a mother's willingness to fight. And Kendra Morgan was about to learn that the more a powerful woman tried to take from her, the stronger she became. The letter sat on Kendra's table like something alive, something poisonous. She kept rereading the bold legal threats until the words blurred together. Each accusation, unfit mother, unsafe environment, financial instability, felt like a slap across her face. Lily sat on the rug stacking her colorful plastic blocks, completely unaware that someone powerful and angry wanted to rip her away from everything she knew. Kendra leaned back against the chair, pressing both hands over her eyes as panic tightened around her chest. She thought Alexandra's anger at the grave had been the peak of danger, but she had been naive. That moment had only been a spark. This lawsuit, this attempt to take Lily, was the fire. By late afternoon, the fear had turned into a steady ache that crawled up Kendra's spine. She forced herself to breathe, to think, to stop replaying the worst-case scenarios. She needed help. Real help. Not just the words of friends who meant well, but couldn't stop a billionaire. She didn't know lawyers, couldn't afford consultations, and had never been inside a courtroom except for jury duty. She felt small, painfully small, standing against people who could end her world with a signature. She remembered a name then. A name Daniel had once whispered late at night, half serious, half teasing. If anything ever happens to me, call Holland. He's old school, but he's loyal. At the time, she laughed it off as dramatic, never imagining that life would twist into something out of a courtroom drama. But now the memory surfaced like a lifeline. She grabbed her phone and searched through old messages until she found the number Daniel left. One long exhale, then she pressed call. A deep voice answered. Holland. Mr. Holland? My name is Kendra Morgan. Daniel Whitford gave me your number before he passed. He said to call you if anything happened. Silence stretched. Then the tone shifted. Where are you? Bridgeport. My apartment. Something is happening. His mother. She's trying to take Lily. I'll be there in an hour, he said. And he hung up. Kendra paced the living room, nerves buzzing until Lily toddled into her arms and forced her to slow down. True to his word, exactly 1 hour later, there was a knock at the door. Kendra opened it cautiously. A tall man in his 50s stood there, silver hair, stern eyes, and a posture that suggested he'd spent years carrying secrets heavier than most people imagined. He stepped inside, looked around, then focused on Lily. That's his child, he said quietly. Not a question, a confirmation. Kendra nodded, throat tight. You knew? I suspected, he said. Daniel talked about you two a lot more than his mother ever knew. The mention of Daniel made her chest twist painfully. She filed for guardianship, Kendra whispered. I don't know what to do. Holland motioned for her to sit. She obeyed. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small USB drive. 3 days before Daniel died, he came to see me. Said he needed protection for you and the baby. He made me promise that if something happened to him, I'd get this to you. Kendra stared at the drive in his hand. Fear and hope collided inside her. What's on it? See for yourself, he said, voice low. And be ready. Kendra plugged it into her laptop with trembling fingers. A video file opened, grainy, dimly lit, recorded in a parked car. Then Daniel appeared on screen, eyes red-rimmed, hair damp from rain, breathing uneven. She covered her mouth as tears rose. If you're watching this, Daniel said softly, it means I didn't make it back. Kendra's breath caught. Lily crawled into her lap, sensing the shift in energy. I need you to know the truth about us, Daniel continued. About Lily. About my mother. She will try to take everything from you. She's done it before. Holland watched quietly from the corner as the video continued. Daniel spoke of their secret marriage, the city hall ceremony, the promises he made about leaving the Whitford empire to protect his daughter. He confessed what Alexandra had done 20 years earlier, forcing his teenage girlfriend to end a pregnancy, threatening her into disappearing. I'm not letting her do that again, Daniel whispered. Not to you. Not to our daughter. I left documents. I left proof. Holland knows. And so will the court. Fight, Kendra. Fight for Lily. I love you both. The screen went black. Kendra sat frozen, tears flowing silently down her face. Lily leaned her head on her mother's chest, confused but comforted by the steady beat of her heart. Holland stepped forward and placed an envelope on the table. There's more, he said. Daniel left a marriage certificate, text messages, and a statement. A trail of evidence he knew his mother couldn't erase. Kendra touched the envelope like it was holy. Why didn't you bring this sooner? I tried, Holland admitted. Your phone number changed. You moved apartments. I've been trying to find you for months. But now that she filed for guardianship, your name entered the system. That's how I found you. For the first time in days, something warm flickered in Kendra's chest. Hope. What do I do now? Holland looked her directly in the eyes. Now, we get a real lawyer. A good one. And we prepare. Because Alexandra Whitford has money, but you have the truth. And truth is more dangerous than she realizes. Kendra held Lily tighter, her heart pounding with a fierce new resolve. She wasn't just a waitress. She wasn't powerless. Daniel had believed in her. He had trusted her. He had prepared for this. And now, she would fight. The video lingered in Kendra's mind long after the screen went dark. Daniel's voice, shaky but determined, echoed through every corner of her tiny apartment. She replayed his words again and again, "Fight for Lily." The weight of that plea settled over her like armor. She wiped her tears and looked at Holland, who waited patiently, letting her absorb the truth. His presence alone grounded her, reminding her she wasn't walking into this war alone. But as the hours passed, Kendra realized that evidence, no matter how powerful, wasn't enough. Alexandra had resources, lawyers, influence, and a public image polished to perfection. The legal system often listened more closely to the powerful than the truthful. Kendra needed more than documents. She needed the world to see who Alexandra really was. She needed the public to care. And she needed allies who could expose the billionaire's tactics on a much larger stage. Holland seemed to sense her thoughts. He stepped closer, hands folded behind his back. "There's one more thing we should do," he said. Kendra looked up. "What's that?" "We need someone who can control the narrative before Alexandra twists it. Someone who can shine a light where she wants shadows." "A lawyer?" Kendra asked. "Better," Holland replied. "A journalist." The name he gave her was Renee Taylor, an award-winning investigative reporter known for digging into stories involving abuse of power. Her articles had unraveled political cover-ups, exposed corrupt CEOs, and defended ordinary people crushed by wealth or influence. If anyone could balance the battlefield against Alexandra Whitford, it was Renee. Holland made the call. Within 2 hours, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a notebook tucked beneath her arm knocked on Kendra's door. She carried an air of quiet intensity, the kind of presence that demanded attention without raising her voice. Kendra offered her a seat, feeling both nervous and strangely hopeful. Renee began gently. "I understand you're dealing with a custody threat involving a high-profile family." "That's one way to put it," Kendra whispered. "Start from the beginning," Renee said. "I'm here to listen." Kendra told her everything. The relationship with Daniel, his kindness, his dreams, their secret marriage, the pregnancy, the joy and fear intertwined. She described Daniel's death and the pain that hollowed out her world, the choices she made to keep Lily safe, and the quiet visits to his grave. Then she told her about Alexandra, the confrontation, the threats, the envelope, the accusations. Renee didn't interrupt once. She simply wrote, occasionally glancing up to study Kendra's face, as though measuring truth by the tremble in her voice or the conviction in her eyes. When Kendra finished, Renee leaned back slowly. "Do you have proof of the marriage?" she asked. "Yes." Kendra placed Daniel's envelope on the table. "And more." Renee lifted the marriage certificate, the notarized signatures, the photo Daniel had taken of them outside City Hall. Then she plugged in the USB. When Daniel's face appeared on the screen, Renee's expression hardened into something sharp and focused. "Has anyone else seen this?" she asked quietly. "No," Kendra whispered. "Just you. And Holland." "This will change everything," Renee murmured. "In the court of law, and in the court of public opinion." But she wasn't done. She turned to Holland. "Daniel mentioned his mother did this before, forced a pregnant girl to disappear. Is there proof?" Holland nodded. "Names. Dates. A former girlfriend who moved to California after Alexandra paid her off. She might talk." Renee's pen paused midair. "Give me her contact information. If she corroborates Daniel's story, Alexandra's entire argument collapses." Kendra's voice shook. "Do you think this will help me keep Lily?" Renee closed her notebook and met her eyes directly. "A billionaire's power is built on silence. You break that silence, and you break their shield. If even half of what Daniel said is true, then Alexandra has a history of controlling his relationships. That pattern matters. It shows motive. It shows intent. It shows she is not acting out of concern for Lily, but out of fear of losing her grip on her son's legacy." Kendra sank back into her chair, overwhelmed. I'm just a waitress." Renee shook her head. "No, you're a mother fighting for her child. That story resonates deeper than any bank account balance." After hours of questions and reviewing every piece of evidence, Renee stood to leave. "I'm publishing this," she said. "Not recklessly, carefully, with documentation. But once it's out there, things will move fast." "Will Alexandra retaliate?" Kendra asked softly. "Absolutely," Renee replied. "People like her always do." "Then why do it?" because the truth matters, and because she's counting on you being too afraid to fight back. As Renee left the apartment, the weight of the battle ahead settled onto Kendra's shoulders again. But this time, it didn't crush her. It steadied her, empowered her. That night, she held Lily close, whispering promises into her soft curls. I'm not giving up. No matter what she tries, I'll fight for you. Your father trusted me, and I won't let either of you down. Across the city, in a penthouse overlooking the water, Alexandra stared at her phone, unaware that a story was forming, one she couldn't buy her way out of. Because for the first time, people were beginning to see the cracks in her empire. And the truth Daniel left behind was about to drag her entire legacy into the light. 3 days passed in a blur of tension as heavy as storm clouds pressing against the horizon. Kendra barely slept, haunted by the countdown toward the guardianship hearing. Every hour felt like a step closer to losing Lily, like the walls were closing in no matter how much evidence she held. The city seemed louder, harsher, sirens echoing down the street, neighbors arguing in the hall, footsteps outside her door making her jump. But what kept her steady was the small weight of her daughter nestled against her chest each night. Lily's warm breath against her skin reminded her why she had to keep pushing forward. She couldn't let Alexandra win. Meanwhile, across town, Renee worked with relentless focus. She contacted the former girlfriend Daniel mentioned, Carmen, and found a woman whose voice still trembled after 2 decades when she spoke of Alexandra Whitford. Carmen confirmed everything: the threats, the payoff, the pressure that forced her to give up her child. Her testimony was raw and heartbreaking. Renee drafted her story with precision, weaving facts, documents, and interviews into a narrative that exposed the billionaire's pattern of manipulation. She planned to release it minutes before the hearing, ensuring the judge would feel the weight of public scrutiny. Holland spent those days preparing Kendra as best he could. They practiced how to answer questions without fear, how to stay calm when Alexandra's lawyers twisted the truth, and how to present Daniel's evidence without cracking under pressure. But Kendra still felt like she was stepping into a lion's den with nothing but Daniel's memory wrapped around her shoulders. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and gray. Kendra's stomach twisted as she entered the family courthouse, a towering brick building that felt both intimidating and indifferent. Lily stayed with Maria in the waiting area, blissfully unaware. Kendra's lawyer, Ms. Donovan, met her near the security checkpoint, offering a reassuring nod. Holland stood beside them, silent but watchful, like a steady anchor in the chaos. When the courtroom doors opened, Kendra felt Alexandra's presence before she even saw her. The billionaire sat at the petitioner's table, flanked by 2 attorneys who looked as polished and expensive as her pearl earrings. Alexandra's gaze cut toward Kendra with the cold precision of a blade, but Kendra didn't look away. Not this time. She reminded herself of Daniel's voice, "Fight for Lily." The judge entered, a stern man with lines etched deep around his mouth. This court will now hear the matter of temporary guardianship concerning minor child, Lily Whitford. The name alone made Kendra's chest tighten. They called her daughter by a name she'd never given permission to use. Alexandra's attorney spoke first, standing with the confidence of someone used to winning. He painted Kendra as an overwhelmed single mother with insufficient income, unstable housing, and limited support. He emphasized the Whitford family's resources, their ability to provide a life suitable for an heir, and the risks of leaving Lily in impoverished conditions. Every word felt like a blow. Kendra gripped the edge of the table, nails biting into her palm. She wanted to shout, to correct him, to defend her life, but her attorney placed a calming hand on her arm. Then it was Ms. Donovan's turn. She stood, cleared her throat, and dropped the first bombshell. "Your Honor, the petitioner has withheld critical information. The child's father, Daniel Whitford, created a video days before his death, acknowledging this child as his and expressing clear wishes regarding custody and protection." A wave of murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Alexandra's head snapped up, eyes wide for the first time. The judge frowned. "Does this video exist?" "Yes, Your Honor." Ms. Donovan plugged a USB into the court's monitor. And there he was, Daniel, alive, breathing, speaking, his voice filling the silent courtroom like a ghost returning to demand justice. Kendra clasped her hands together as tears slid down her cheeks. The judge leaned forward. Alexandra froze, her control fracturing with each second that passed. The video exposed her past, her intentions, her attempts to erase Kendra, just as she did years ago with Carmen. When the screen went dark, the room stayed silent for a long, heavy moment. Then the judge spoke. This is significant. But Alexandra wasn't defeated yet. Her attorney stood quickly, voice rising with urgency. Your Honor, this video is emotional, yes, but not legally binding. There is no proof of a marriage. There is no documentation that Daniel intended to alter any inheritance structure. It is merely sentiment, not law. He miscalculated. Ms. Donovan stepped forward again. Actually, Your Honor, there is proof of marriage. Holland approached the bench and placed a sealed folder before the judge. The room held its breath. The judge broke the seal. Inside lay the marriage certificate. The date. The signatures. The notary stamp. Undeniable. The judge looked up sharply at Alexandra. Mrs. Whitford, were you aware of this marriage? Alexandra's face went pale. I know. I was not. Her voice shook, betraying the control she'd held onto like armor. This changes the entire nature of this case, the judge declared. The child's mother is also the legal spouse of the deceased father. This court cannot strip custody from a fit, legal parent. Kendra's breath caught. Her hands trembled. It was happening. But Alexandra wasn't done. Her voice rose, brittle with panic. She tricked him. She manipulated him. My son would never choose. Enough, the judge snapped. I will not entertain slander. The evidence is clear. Temporary custody remains with Ms. Morgan. The petition is denied. Kendra swayed, overwhelmed as relief crashed over her. Holland steadied her shoulder. But then the judge added something that made the entire courtroom inhale sharply. And furthermore, due to evidence of coercive behavior in Daniel's past relationships and attempts to conceal information relevant to this case, I am recommending a formal investigation into Mrs. Whitford's conduct. Alexandra staggered slightly, gripping the table. Her empire, her image, was cracking in front of everyone. As the hearing adjourned, Kendra turned. Lily ran toward her down the hallway, arms open, calling Mama. Kendra lifted her daughter into her arms, clutching her tight. For the first time since this nightmare began, she allowed herself to believe that she might truly win. But she also knew something else. Alexandra Whitford would not walk away quietly. Not yet.in the days following the courtroom clash, the story spread through Connecticut like wildfire. Headlines erupted across social media, from local newspapers to national segments that highlighted the shocking revelations. Billionaire Alexandra Whitford had attempted to seize custody of her own granddaughter while hiding years of manipulative behavior. Footage of courtroom reactions went viral, especially the moment Daniel's video played, exposing truths Alexandra never expected the world to hear. And in the center of the storm stood Kendra, clutching Lily on the courthouse steps as cameras captured the trembling relief on her face. What began as a private battle had transformed into a public reckoning. Renee released her expose minutes after the hearing. It was meticulous, undeniable, and devastating. It documented Carmen's testimony, the pattern of coercion Alexandra used against women she deemed unworthy, and the financial and emotional pressure she placed on Daniel through the years. Screenshots of messages, interviews with former staff, and evidence Holland provided all came together in a narrative that shattered Alexandra's carefully curated image. The article gained over 1 million views in a single night. Comment sections exploded with outrage. People demanded accountability. The board of Whitford Global called an emergency meeting. Within 24 hours, Alexandra's executive privileges were suspended and an internal investigation launched. Meanwhile, Kendra tried to breathe again. For the first time in weeks, she woke without dread curling around her heart. She made breakfast for Lily, watched her daughter giggle at spilled cereal, and felt something she hadn't felt in so long: peace. Even so, she knew the fight wasn't entirely over. The investigation into Daniel's estate remained open, and she still had to present the marriage certificate to probate court. But now she had allies. Lawyers were offering to help pro bono. Supporters raised funds online. People sent letters thanking her for standing up to someone so powerful. It felt surreal, overwhelming, and humbling. Yet Kendra stayed grounded. All she wanted was security for Lily, not fame or sympathy. On the other side of the city, Alexandra's mansion remained disturbingly silent. She had retreated behind her gates like a wounded monarch gripping the crumbling pieces of her throne. The board's decision felt like betrayal. The public outrage felt beneath her, but she couldn't deny the pressure. Every news anchor repeated the same questions. How far did her control reach? What else had she hidden? How many lives had she shaped through fear? Each headline chipped away at her certainty. Her world was no longer bending to her will. The breaking point came when the probate judge summoned both parties. Kendra arrived with Holland and Ms. Donovan by her side, heart pounding but head held high. Alexandra entered moments later, but the confidence she once carried like armor was gone. She walked with a stiffness that came not from pride but from fear. When the judge reviewed Daniel's final documents, his handwritten will, his marriage certificate, and financial transfers planned for Lily, it became undeniable. Kendra was Daniel's legal heir through marriage, and Lily was his rightful successor. The judge's ruling was firm. Mrs. Whitford acted outside her legal authority when transferring her son's assets. The Whitford estate, as written in this will, belongs to his wife and child. A single sentence. But it ended Alexandra's control forever. Her face paled as the judge added, "Furthermore, an investigation into the circumstances surrounding Mr. Whitford's medical decisions at the hospital will proceed separately." Kendra's breath hitched. It wasn't vindictive triumph she felt. It was justice finally catching up. Alexandra lowered her head, whispering something Kendra couldn't hear. And then the billionaire, once feared and respected, once cold and untouchable, walked out of the room surrounded not by admirers but investigators waiting to speak with her. Outside, sunlight washed the courthouse steps. Kendra lifted Lily into her arms as cameras flashed, but she no longer flinched beneath the attention. Holland placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his expression softening. "Daniel would be proud," he said quietly. Kendra swallowed the lump in her throat. "I just want Lily to grow up safe." "She will," Holland promised. "You made sure of that." In the following weeks, Alexandra resigned publicly from Whitford Global. The board accepted without ceremony. Reporters noted how the once celebrated business icon vanished from public life, her empire continuing without her. Legal consequences loomed, investigations persisted, but none of that concerned Kendra anymore. For her, the real victory was far simpler. She had her daughter. She had her peace. And she had Daniel's promise fulfilled through her own strength. One quiet evening, long after the scandal faded from daily headlines, Kendra placed Lily in her crib and stepped onto her small balcony. The air was cool, the sky clear, stars blinking gently overhead, the same stars Daniel used to talk about. She lifted the pendant he once gave her, rubbing her thumb across its surface. "I did it," she whispered into the night. "For her. For us." Inside, Lily stirred softly, murmuring in her sleep. Kendra smiled. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew one truth now with certainty. No amount of wealth, influence, or legacy could ever outweigh the power of a mother's love.